Hello, everyone, and welcome to Handmade Hero, a show where we code a complete game live on stream. We are gonna probably try to put some interesting room designs into Handmade Hero today. I'm guessing. We were sort of like last time. It wasn't last weekend because OBS pooped out on us last weekend, and we had to try and fix it. Hopefully, it'll stay working today. We don't know. It worked for the pre-stream. It might work for the regular stream. We'll see. So what we're going to do today is probably go in there and use what we were doing 2 weekends ago when last we were able to program. And we're just going to go ahead and see if we can put some interesting room design in now that we have sort of ways of calling stuff that looks at the entire scene. And, you know, like I said, mostly what we were doing that time was we were just sort of trying to think of how I would what I would describe it as. We had sort of tried to make the system a little bit too abstract at first, largely because we just didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we didn't have a plan for it. We were just kind of putting stuff in there. And I think we want it pretty hand-coded. We don't want a lot of generic systems in there just like doing stuff, because the game design side of things is always very touchy and you want to make a lot of little like tweaks. And so the goal is I'm just trying to reorganize that code so that in as so much as possible, I'm able to really like hand code how things are decided. You know what I mean? So we're trying to make a scaffold, like we're trying to make it so that as much as possible, we don't have to think too hard about where to put stuff in the code so that we can make sort of arbitrary game design tweaky stuff that creates the rooms. And probably we want to do this at all levels. So again, it's tough to give you a little like broader outline of what's going on. I can even, you know what, we can even do this now if OBS is still working. Let's find out. So just to give you a slight outline of the idea. What we have right now is we want to start putting in like, you know, gameplay stuff because we're kind of out of engine stuff to do. And in order to put gameplay stuff in there, we need ways of generating interesting environments from code. Because the idea is this game's supposed to be sort of like a Binding of Isaac kind of feel to it, in that you don't explore one specific world. You like, it generates something for you each time. And when we do this, it's important that we give ourselves the maximum amount of flexibility when programming the thing that generates the world, because that's what the user is going to be playing, right? They're going to be interacting with this world. And so if we just kind of throw some random numbers in there and cross our fingers, it's going to feel exactly like that's what we did. When they play the game, it's just going to feel like they're playing a bunch of random numbers, and it's not going to be very satisfying. So we need ways of hand coding a lot of stuff. Like when we're like, oh, it would be nice if when we put one of these in the room, there was sometimes this happened, because that makes an interesting gameplay thing. That's just human intuition, and we need to be able to like dump that in to the generator easily so that we're not struggling all the time to make those things happen. At the same time, it's a fairly complicated problem, because one of the things that you get with random generation is you've got all these things happening at different levels. You've got randomly placed rooms with randomly placed goals and randomly placed environments that randomly connect to each other with random enemies. There's so much stuff in there that it can be hard to organize that code in such a way that allows all of it to actually be smart about how it's doing what it's doing. And so it's going to be a little while, I think, of us just, you know, trying architecturally trying things to get it down to what works well and is simple, but that also still like actually allows us to generate what we need to generate in a convenient way. So that's really what we're doing. And so we're just trying to feel out where that is. And we previously on Handmade Hero didn't really care about how things were generated because we weren't trying to do gameplay. We were just doing engine stuff. And so it doesn't really matter what we generate. Just as long as we generate anything, we can work on like the renderer or whatever, right? But now that we're actually trying to say, let's try to make the game work in a way that's like fun to play, or that there's interesting things for the player to do in this world, that's when we now need to start saying, look, the generation code is where all this stuff is going to happen. Every time we add something in the gameplay code, we're going to need to back that up with it generating, interesting things happening in the generator to expose that gameplay. We don't want that to be a pain in the butt. We need that to be nice and fluid. And so that's what we have to start working on. Much like how we're starting to work on the entity system, these two things are the gameplay part, right? Entity system and generation are what determine the gameplay. And so we need to just refine these to the point where it's very easy for us to make the changes that we need to make, and to make sure that the code operates in a way that allows us to express things cleanly so that we're not struggling all the time. And cleanly is probably the wrong word, succinctly, so that we don't have to constantly do all these like larger systemic changes to make stuff happen. So that's what we're doing. And we're going to give that a shot right now. Some of that a shot right now. So if you take a look at how we sort of left things, you can see that we just put like a little temporary door. It's just a stone graphic in there. We don't have a door graphic right now. And when you hop on like a thing, it moved the door down or whatever. And we have some stuff we wanted to do gameplay-wise with the pressure plates. We had some stuff we wanted to fix. We could fix those now too, because that's pretty straightforward. But mainly the thing we want to do is now start putting in pressure plate patterns into the room. And we kind of need rooms to we need to like work on that room generation code so it's easy for us to do things like put down enemies, pressure plates, and obstacles in a way that works together, right? And that's why I keep saying like we need to make it more hand coded in a way. Because we just don't currently have any way of expressing that stuff with the way that we did the generation code before, right? We just don't have a way. We were just dumping things in and then they randomly got placed, and that's really not going to cut it. So we're trying to figure out ways of making that be more logical, right? That be more flexible. Okay. So if we take a look at the energy generator code, you can see like the first change that we made to try and make, how do we get this purple? That's a new four-coder thing. We've got like a bright purple for Casey. Is that like, to let it me know it's me? I don't even know. Oh, look at this purple. What's going on with this crazy purple? Just Ryan, what's going on with this crazy purple? That is some crazy purple right there. Anyway, I'm probably wanting to change that color at some point. That is nuts. So we made one of the first changes we wanted to make, which is you can see here that now what happens is entities are not generated individually. They're generated as part of patterns, and patterns are laid down inside their own hand-coded routines. The reason I did this was, again, so that I could hand code crazy rules, like whatever I want. I didn't have to make them fit some system. I could just have whatever crazy rule I want, and that would be how, it would be laid out. So this is the first step in doing that, and now you can kind of see like, all right, so the tile switch pattern, for example, we need to start making some tools that allow me to lay these tiles out easily, right? Some way that I can make the tile switch pattern be intelligent. And what you can see here, for example, is this tries to put 4 tiles down, right? At the moment. And it tries to put 4 tiles down, but so you know what I also noticed? I need to like have this mail up there so that I can do it. My types aren't highlighting anymore either. Did you notice that? Like it used to be that the types would highlight, but they don't anymore. And I'm not sure why. It might be because we haven't actually set the correct thing, but I just want to, if you'll excuse me for a moment, I just want to, why don't types highlight? Is this a setting? And what is this garish purple? Okay. So I'll look at those. Those are probably actually pretty easy answers. I can probably figure them out myself. They're probably just settings, but I just want to note all of the things that I noticed so that I can fine-tune it. All right. So if we go ahead and continue forward, if we march forward, what I want to do is say, all right, let's try to make this grid thing. Let's try to make this pattern generator actually generate patterns that I care about, right? So one way to do this, there's a couple different things I might want to do, and I'm just going to kind of mention them out loud. So if you take a look in here, we've got this genentity pattern. This probably wants some parameters so that when you put a pattern in a room, you can specify stuff and things like this. I don't really know exactly how I want to do this, but one thing I can pretty much say is, we probably want something in here that's like a difficulty, right? Where we can just spam stuff out there and say, look, when we call a particular generator, we're going to want things in the room to be coordinated in terms of how difficult they are. So, for example, a really hard room might generate lots of patterns with high difficulty. So the enemy pattern, the tile switch pattern, and the obstacle pattern may all be like hard. Lots of tiles with hard restrictions, enemies with lots of hit points that do a lot of damage, these sorts of things, right? And similarly, in other parts, we may want like a high difficulty tile pattern with a low difficulty enemy, or low difficulty everything in introductory areas, right? So one thing that we probably want to do is just carry a difficulty idea along with the patterns so that every pattern generator can be tuned to be able to generate things reasonably. And so like in here, for example, maybe when we look and we say like random between like this, maybe in the tile switch pattern thing, we've got some ideas about how these patterns might go. And there's probably going to be like a lot of stuff in here. At first, I'm just going to say, let's just do some simple patterns that have like, that generate some pretty simple sort of directional things. And there's a couple things that we probably want to add here, which is because tiles are so important, we probably also want easy ways to test to see whether there are tiles in places or not, right? And so that's something we probably should add as well. Like the grid should know, so that as we put things in the grid, it knows like, oh, here's where the tiles were or something, right? So we probably want that to happen as well. All right, so first things first, I'm just going to do some simple setup stuff here where maybe we break things down into difficulty. Like I'm going to say like if the difficulty is, and maybe we'll just call the difficulty D just because we're going to use it everywhere. So if I say like, all right, the pattern, I get called with the pattern, right? Yeah. So if the pattern difficulty is less than like, 25, if it's less than 75, and then otherwise this is like the hardest or whatever, right? Then what I might do is say, let's take the tile counts and we'll put the tile counts in as like some kind of a, of a thing that gets set on each of these paths, right? So, and I'll initialize it to 0 because why not? I don't really need to, but I might as well. So in here, if it's less, maybe there's only like 4 tiles or whatever in a simple case, just something really, really basic, or maybe there's only like very few. So sometimes there's only 1, I don't know. So we could look in here and say, we're going to take the entropy here, the grid itself. So if we look at the edit grid, interesting. Product. I wonder what product means. I don't know. I'm not sure. This is pretty confusing. So, like, I typed in edit grid, right? And it looks like it shows me everything in the file edit grid for some reason. And I have no idea why that would happen. Like, none of these things are edit grid. Maybe what it's saying is here's the things that use edit grid. But But it doesn't seem to, because like this doesn't use edit grid at all. Right? So I feel like that's really weird, and I don't like that at all. I don't want it to find files at all. So let me add this. It's gonna be this thing of like making a bigger and bigger email. Why does project search find file names? Maybe I called the wrong thing. I don't know. Oh. Let me ask Ryan. It looks like Ryan's here. So I can ask Ryan, and see what he has to say. I don't know if there's an answer. There might be. We'll find out. But who knows? All right. So anyway, I don't really care because I don't really need it that badly. But again, these are things I don't want to keep having these problems, so I just want to get it to a good state and leave it. So I'm hoping we can just, iron some of those out. So in the edit grid, you can see that in here the series, it comes in with the, with the grid. So I think I can just do something like this where I just pull the series out. Now, it's hard to say because it might be that what I should do is actually have the random, maybe should just be right on the grid so that I don't even have to pull it out. But I don't know, right? So who knows? Anyway, so assuming we have the series in here, what I'm going to do is say, look, there's going to be between maybe 1 and 4 tiles in those cases. There's going to be like between 4 and 12 tiles in this case, and there's going to be between maybe like 8 and 16 tiles in this case. I don't know. And we don't care. I'm just trying to get some stuff set up that sort of starts to look like something I could imagine doing in game programming, in gameplay programming, right? And so when we do the tile counts here, then what we need to do is figure out what kind of patterns they're going to be, and also what kind of tiles they're going to be. Because we want to have a couple different tile types, and so there's a tile, there'd be a tile rule. You know what I'm saying? So there'd be tiles that are you have to stand on this tile for a certain number of seconds, potentially, in order to trigger it, right? So I feel like there's going to be a couple of things like that we want to set as well, and those would get set in here. We just don't quite have that yet. So once we know how many tiles there are, then we have to kind of figure out what kind of tile pattern we want to do, and the tile pattern, I guess, would be how it snakes through. We can have tile patterns, the tiles don't have to be connected, but it probably is more fun to see them connected a lot of the time. So we probably want to actually have a specific idea of what kind of pattern we're talking about. We probably want to choose, are we doing a snake-like pattern or a line-like pattern? We probably want these to be, hand-coded, I guess is what I'm saying. We don't want them to be random. We want to say, here's one that's one that goes in directions and makes turns, right? And here's one that, that just randomly scatters. I don't know. I don't have a concrete idea, but I just think we want there to be, discrete types of patterns, and that the player recognizes those patterns specifically. You know what I'm saying? So and to the point where this is probably going to be the sort of thing that even has its own associated nonsense, right? Like, it's probably going to have, like, something like this, and maybe we even have, you know, like a tracker. So we'd create one of these and we'd like push, you know, ones on there, right? And so I would almost do like, okay, we've got a tile pattern, and we start making the tile pattern by using different things, and maybe we have like a, you know, tile pattern type, and the tile pattern type, let's say there's just like line, snake, and scatter. I don't know. So like scatter would just kind of put them around. Line will just go in one straight direction, and snake will like bend, you know, occasionally or something like that. And so what we do here is say, you know what, actually we can even make this be like part of it. So we do tile pattern, right? And then in here we do pattern max tile count, not moss tile count. We do max tile count to set it, right? And in here, we just go ahead and pick the max tile count out of the series. And then in here, we just do like while pattern tile count is less than pattern max tile count, you know, pick. Right? So we'd create this, and this way we can have functions that do picking based on this sort of thing. And we can also do checking, you know what I mean? All right. So the way that I would approach this is I would say, like, I would say for our tile pattern thing here, so I think what I want, and again, this is all just me making stuff up. I'm not a game designer, so please just always take this stuff with a grain of salt. I'm just doing the code that comes to mind based on having played games. That's it, right? So, you know, if you actually want to know how to do the process of deciding how to make this stuff work, you really want to watch like John Blow's stream, not my stream. This is me just randomly saying, I'm going to place some patterns on the floor, but I'm probably not doing it in a very good way, because there's probably ways that if you did a lot of game design code very well, like John does, then you probably know how to do this stuff, right? So I would highly recommend not following my logic of how I'm deciding what to do here. You know, I still feel like the way I write code is good if you can somehow separate that from what I'm deciding to write. But, you know, please try to make that separation in your head as much as possible, because the decision-making process here will be poor, right? So you have to keep that in mind, because, you know, you want to take game design process advice from an expert game designer, not an engine programmer. Engine programmers don't know how to do game design, so, you know, it's not the right person to listen to. So please keep that in the back of your head this entire time. Okay. So anyway, in here, I just want to do like a simple thing that's like tile already exists or something. And so if you pass a tile pattern, it'll tell you if this particular tile pattern has this tile in it, right? So at this particular position, you know what I'm saying? And again, I don't care about this code right now, so I'm literally just going to write the stupidest possible thing. I'm going to loop through all of the tile indexes in the pattern, and I'm just going to see if we've already placed one there. We'll reject it, right? And that'll be that. I noticed 4Coder's indentation is still broken also, so that's another one I should probably put in there. It's weird. It actually seems to... Is it actually lining it up with that? I doubt that's true. No. So it's a hard-coded 4 tabs in. For some reason, it looks like it's correctly picking the hanging indent, but it's adding the actual tab stop after the hanging indent for no reason. So that's one. So Ryan may check the stream. We'll see. Let me go ahead and also load in apps 4Coder bindings. So if we look at J, it's behind my head right now, but if we look at the jump command, you can see like F4 search for definition project wide, right? If we search for edit grid, you can see that it just gives us like every function that's in edit grid.h or .cpp, even though all we really wanted to know is we really just wanted to jump to edit grid, right? So let me type this in. F4 search for definition project wide. Right. And we don't really know what's going on with that. It's super weird. But, you know, I don't know what it's doing. It's doing something. Anyway. So I'm just going to look through these and see if the tile match, if the position that you're going to put, I'll call this I for index. If the tile that you're going to put in here matches, then off you go. Otherwise, it doesn't, right? So the result is false. The result equals, you know, whether or not these two are equal, tells us the answer, and then we return the result. I've been trying to get in the habit of not putting parentheses around my returns because there's no reason for it, but I always do it. I don't know why I got in that habit. It's been since, like, I think literally since I was, like, started programming C. But I'm not sure why I would have done that. I don't know who would have told me to do that or why. I don't know. So that's a good question. So anyway, let me just go ahead and change this name because I was right. Pattern already exists. So let's just call this tiles. And we will try placing these. So the very first step is not very interesting. All I'm going to do at first is make something that I guess we'll just say, like, at first all we're going to do is make something that doesn't ever place overlapping tiles, which is very simple, right? So all we're going to do is say, look, let's start by placing one tile maybe as a random tile. So, you know, maybe something like this, where we say, find a random open tile. And at the moment, that's doing this, but we could just place it randomly, so who knows. Excuse me. So at the moment anyway, if we take a look at these two, we could randomize those. We'll leave it placed at the center for now so that it's easy for us to look at what's going on. But then what I would say is, so tile at rel index is probably what we want. So our Gen v3s in this case, yeah. In this case, so I'm just going to do this and say tile at rel index is going to be the first one that we put in there. And I guess I'm not sure if we can't find a place to put the pattern, I guess we just don't put in the pattern, right? That just is a failure, you know? I mean, I don't know. But I guess that's what we would want. So I think that's what I would do, and then I'll just say like a pen tile or something, and we'll just say, look, we're gonna give the tiles this new index here, so we're gonna put one tile in there, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep going until we can't anymore. So in here, what we'll do is say, you know, maybe we do this for now. And again, like, I don't really want to keep doing this, so we're not going to do this forever. But we'll just do a random unilateral where we just say, please give us random tiles that are open. And if the thing we get back happens to be one of the ones we already placed, we just won't place it, right? So if it's valid, we keep going. If it's not, I guess we break. So we say, like, look, if that's okay. And then in here, we just say, don't place the tile unless, you know, if it's already overlapping. Right? Now, we have a problem here, which is we would loop forever if we kept picking, if there's only one tile, but it happens to be, you know, in the place of, it happens to be somewhere that's open, but we can't place a tile because we already placed the tile there. So we may want to do something more like, you know, let's do something more like this. Let's just try random placement. And it's probably true that this is a little bit weak sauce, but I just don't want to ever have a case where we can end up looping forever trying to place things we can't place. So maybe what we do instead is say, look, we're going to go and we're going to loop for as long as we can, and we didn't find the placement we needed. So we just give up, right? At that point. So then we go like, okay, you know, find a random open tile. If the tile is valid, then we append it. If it's not, then we don't. And we can also say here, like, and tile exists already, or whatever this function was. Tile already exists. So we can call that to verify that, you know, it's in this particular pattern doesn't already have that tile in it, right? All right. So I'm not sure that this is great. There may be some other issues with it, but we're just going to start with this. So I'm going to say that, you know, the tiles are going to get tested here. If we get a tile that actually works, we're going to place the, you know, the tile in there, and we're going to go from there. At the moment, we're not going to do anything else interesting. We're just going to leave it at that. We don't have that particular... Oh, what is tile index? Oh, it's the number of the tile. So in this case, it's the tile count would be what goes in there. And so we would do something like this, right? And, well, you know what? Actually, we could even do something more like this. This is probably a little bit more sensible, just so we can have like a clean idea of when you added a tile, what index did it actually get, so that that's not so wishy-washy, right? So if we say, okay, we take the tile pattern in, we take in what the Gen v3 index is of it, then in here we just want to assert that no one is trying to pack in more tiles than we allow, right? In fact, we may even just do max counts. We may say, look, you should not ever have more than that as well. So we'll say it has to be less than max count, has to be less than the @I. And then we just do an insertion. So we'll literally just plop it in there. And that'll just, you know, allow us to quickly sort of figure that out. The result index is just whatever the place in the array is, you know? So that's easy for us to provide. And so now we're, quote unquote, placing these in. And in theory, we should be able to have longer numbers now, maybe. Although the fact that now I don't see anything means that failed spectacularly. Okay, so let's go ahead and step through this now and figure out, oh, that's why. So we want to check if it doesn't exist, not if it does. There we go. All right, so now let's take a look and see what's up. It looks like we're still only getting one tile there, so that seems broken. Oh, and that's because this didn't get fixed. Random unilateral series. Random unilateral series. And so now we should just get scattered tiles. That are sort of placed throughout the room. And there's an example, although I'm not sure why there's only one. Again, still a little bit weird. So that doesn't seem quite right. It should give us randomization between 1 and 4 when we set the max count up. So when we insert these, when we find a random open tile at a random location here, we should... This may be a case where this doesn't actually work, for all I know. So we can double check that. But, this seems fine. Like, though, like this should do it. It looks like this will search it just fine, right? So it uses the UV to kind of like, figure out the distance, and then it just, you know, loops over the tiles and tries to find them. So I feel like we can verify that that's actually returning different stuff, but I don't actually know. As I spill water all over myself. I like this water bottle, but it's very wide-mouthed, and if you're not careful, when you take a big sip, you definitely get it. You definitely get it all over you. So, not the best, but you know, what are you gonna do? Okay, so let me just see what's going on here, because this doesn't seem good. It could be that this is failing, so the tile already exists could be failing as well. So let me just, because we just slapped that in there, let me just make sure that there's not an obvious problem with that before we go any further. But so you take a look here, you say, okay, loop through. I'm going to rename this to tiles to just be consistent. Again, not a good day for programming. just being sloppy today. It's supposed to be not are equal to. So this should be... Let's just do it this way. So if we find a tile, then we say, look, there's already a tile there, and we break. That's what that probably should have looked like. But anyway. So for some reason, we're only placing one tile. And we should force it to place multiple tiles so we know that it's not a random number generation thing. But, you know, the random number generator should not be able to generate one like an infinite number of times, right? So it seems pretty clear that it's not actually working. It is picking one random tile, but somehow it's never picking any more than one, right? So something's busted there, and, oh, although that was a room with multiple tiles. All right, maybe I spoke too soon. Hold on a second. So let's also do this where we just say, let's set max count equal to 4 so we know there should always be 4, and let's just see what it does. Because I have no idea. So in this particular case, it looks like it actually generated 4 tiles. There's one down here, which we can't... The camera doesn't work when you hop out of the room like that. We should probably fix the stairs. One of these days. But, alright, so no, the random number generator was just constantly picking 1? Somehow? Super confused right now. I don't know how that's possible, but that seems to be the case. So that's weird. Let's go ahead and find out what is going on with that. Is our random number generator just super crappy? So this is like an XOR shift. Right? All right. Let's just do this. Cause that makes me a grumpy puppy. And I don't want to be a grumpy puppy. So here's a question. Let's suppose that right in the middle of this, for no apparent reason, I'm going to go ahead and say, let's switch to debug build, like so. And I'm going to ask for a histogram of these sizes, and I want to know like what the random number generator piece of crap that's in there right now is doing, because I don't like it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say for hist test equals 0, hist test is less than some number hist test. And then what I'm going to do is say, okay, there's a histogram. The histogram's going to have 4 things in it because that's what we did before. They're going to be initialized to 0. And I'm going to do a random between 0 and 3. Which should give us exactly those things, right? So then we can say histogram plus plus. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm just saying, look, I'm going to make 4 buckets. I'm going to ask the random number generator, if it is in fact a random number generator, to give me a random number between 0 and 3. I'm going to count how often it lands in each of the 4 buckets. I'm going to run that a bunch of times, and then we're just going to look and see like what the heck it actually was. And to make it a little easier on myself, I'll also just really quickly do a thing here where I loop over each of the histogram values and just divide by the total. So like, so I'm gonna grab this total count here. I'm just gonna say like, do that many, and the hist percent for each one of these buckets, I just want that to be equal to a percentage value that I can read. So like 100% times a floating point version of the thing in that bucket. So the histogram at that bucket, I just want to make it into a percentage, and there's no reason for that other than me just wanting to be able to read it easily. So I can just look at a percentage and say what percentage went into each bucket, and I don't want these percentages to be like widely different, right? So I really don't want to see them all go into one bucket and none go into the other, and that is just a way of me trying to convince myself that the random number generator works at all, which at this point, who knows if it does. We didn't really write one on stream ever. So like, you know, all right, I mean, hard to argue with that, right? Not to be taken for a con job here, though. Let's just find out what happens in a small number of cases, just to make sure there aren't like weird like period problems where it just like gets into states where it'll often pick the same thing. But I mean, I guess what I would say about that is there's nothing particularly bad about that necessarily, because, you know, it's random. It's not supposed to be uniform distribution over a very small series of numbers. So I don't know that I would consider that an issue, right? It's really hard to say what you want to have happen there. So I'm gonna do something here that's a little bit funky, but I just, again, I'm just not sure. I want to make sure I'm like comfortable with what's going on. I'm not 100% sure I am. So what I might do here is just say, look, why don't you give me like a random series here that I'm just gonna try doing some munging on. And yeah, you know, like, I don't know. Maybe that. I'm not sure. So I'm just gonna go ahead and dump some random pseudo assembly-ish code in here and see what I think about when I actually get some random numbers. So let's do like a test series here, and we'll just go ahead and do a few rounds of AES on it and just see what happens, right? So, how do you set 0 on an SI-128, or can you? Yeah, I never remember what the heck the things are. All right, so let's suppose that we just like mix up a a SIMD register a bunch of times. And then what we do is, instead of doing random between like we were here, so like here's the way we were picking the index before. you know? And we're not going to do that this time. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to mix this guy. Let's say we run 3 rounds of this. How expensive is the one that's in there right now? So the one that's in there right now is a bunch of dependent shift XORs. So this is like 6 cycles. So this would be significantly more expensive than sys cycles. This would be 8 cycles. So let's see what happens if we just do 8 cycles with an AES-NI mix. Let's just do that. And then we'll try extracting one of these. I don't know what the easiest way to extract these is at the moment. But is it like maybe one of these? The Intel intrinsic naming is always just, I never have any the heck idea what the stuff is. All right, hold on a second. Let's look it up as we always do. Because I never remember what the intrinsics are. They always boggle my mind. So convert, like, is it an EPI 32? Is it like is it this? Okay, so this is why I always get it wrong. So the thing you're converting from goes next to the CVT. I gotta like get that into my head, right? So it's CVT SI128 underscore SI32. So it's that, and also it's converting the, yeah, I mean, well, it doesn't matter. Point being, I probably am never going to remember these. Let's just be honest. I'm going to be looking them up in that thing forever. All right, so that would get us out an index, and then we need to mod it at the moment. I mean, for right now, we can just AND it with what we were doing, so that's not that big a deal. But so in here, we know that we just want a number between 0 and 4. Well, yeah, I'll just do this for now, but we could just do an AND, right? So that's pretty easy. But point being, I'm just doing a check to see what the histogram says on something that's a different way of generating these numbers. So if I do that, what do I get? So that looks like a similar distribution to me on 100. I mean, on 1,000, right? To the other one. I'm going to also try slightly more mixing and just see what happens. But that may be okay. Trying to get it right at the end there. There we go. So, it doesn't seem better, right? And we can try it on a 100, but again, it doesn't seem like there's really anything particularly great about it. So we're just going to assume. So it seems like the distribution is not particularly different to me. So that all seems fine. And if we went back up to the number before, I assume this would also give. I could have like not done a very good job with that part of it, but no. So it's nice and distributed. So I don't know. Seems okay. Not a real issue. So I guess it was picking 1 a lot of the time for some reason, right? I don't have an explanation for that, but I guess that's just the way the random cookie crumbled. Right? I mean, that's just what happened. So, okay. Back to our story. So now I want to try making some, differences in how these things are picked. So, for example, in here where I said, like, let's make a couple of these, right? So in here, what I want to do is maybe just do a switch on the type. So in the tile set, maybe instead of line, this will be like horizontal and vertical. You know what I'm saying, bro? I don't know why there's a semicolon there. Don't need that. I will say C did not do a great job with the whole semicolon versus not semicolon thing. You can understand when looking at the parser, like, why it is the way it is, but it's just not, it's not particularly great. Anyway, so if we take a look at each of these, it should be pretty easy for us to determine how to extend a pattern in either case, right? So if we're going to do in any of these cases, regardless of which ones we do, and there's some cool stuff we could do here, but in any of these cases, we can start with a random open tile on the first tile. So this, right, this happens anytime we don't have any tiles yet. If the tiles count is 0, then we do that. If the tiles count is non-zero, we find a tile based on some rules about how we want this to work. Now, I would also argue that, like, there's probably 2 of these as well. So, like, a snake would never branch. It would just be sequential tiles, but that go in any direction. A branching one is one where, like, you can go from anywhere to anywhere, right? Yeah. I'm kind of cold. Can I be real with you right now? I'm cold right now. Like, I don't quite understand it seems like my master plan for lighting the studio worked better than I had originally anticipated. Because one of my main goals for doing the lighting here was for it to take up no space and not generate any heat. And it seems like I was able to do both of those things. However, the downside is that I am now cold. So that happened. In the summer, we'll be happy. In the winter, we are sad. Okay. So, moving on and on. Kersplat. So here's the thing about the webcam. I asked people. I was like, should I mirror it or not? And I showed both on stream. People didn't want it mirrored. People didn't want it mirrored. So you're going to have to, like, you guys need to have some arguments, you need to have some arguments amongst yourselves and figure out, because I was thinking mirrored as well. I was like, shouldn't I be facing the code? But, like, people didn't want that. And so I feel like there needs to be some kind of, like, internal war for dominance where, there's lots of casualties and everyone dies and it's a bloodbath, but in the end, we know whether it should be mirrored or not, right? And so I don't know if it's local to me, but I'm getting a lot of pixel flickering on the 4-coder capture. Interesting. So I don't know what that's from. I can pretty much say that, at least looking at the raw capture, there's no flickering on the raw capture. Now, what goes out the wire, I don't know. But like the raw capture, there doesn't seem to be pixel flicker, so it may be for the compression. Yeah. Are the people who are noticing flicker, are they on source stream quality or are they on some other stream quality? Would be my other question, because it could also be Twitch introducing it. I don't know. So think about that. I'm gonna go back to programming this. But you guys should figure it out. On source, it's very subtle. So my guess would be that it's probably OBS when it's libx64, right? libx64 probably has problems with it, maybe. You know what I'm saying to you? libx64 may be sucking. And we may be able to fix that by changing the settings for libx264. Actually, wait a second. We can't fix this now because the stream is live, but actually, is this still using the AMD encoder? No, so it's set, at the moment it is set to use X264 as the encoder, so we aren't getting the weird AMD bugs, which were causing really bad stuff. Not flicker, they were causing like weird wave patterns, and it was nuts. So those are fixed, but we may be able to just change some of the settings on X264. So when we're done, we'll take a look at that. Nothing I can do about it now because you'd have to shut the stream down. But that could be. I'm not sure. But yeah. All right. So moving on. If we want to here, the first time, if we don't have any tiles, then we need to pick one randomly. If we do have tiles, we want to pick one based on a rule, where the rule allows us to like look around. So if I do find random open tile, it looks like this function is all I would really need. So I should be able to like move around. If we take a look at edit tile here, for example, in there we should just be able to adjust this however we wish, right? So if I say we come in here, we would say, like, let's just do each of these in turn. So if we were to do tile pattern horizontal, then what we would do is take, like, the largest tile, I'm just guessing, right? But we would say like, okay, so we'd take the largest one and we'd say like tile at, also this tile at here should probably be like grid, and we probably would seed it with, so like even, we might even go so far as to do this. You know what I'm saying? So we'd start with the largest tile by default at tile at, and then we would do something like is valid and traversable is open and it doesn't already exist, right? So, right? I mean, maybe, I don't know. So in here we would just say, look, we're gonna start with one, and if it's horizontal, we're just gonna try looking in a horizontal direction. We can make this better, but for now, I'm literally just gonna say, like, okay, so it's, you know, it's going that way. And so, you know, here's us searching in various directions. For snake, we would just randomly pick a direction. And when we randomly pick a direction, so the problem that we're going to have is we just want to only have one or the other. So we would probably do something like, I don't know. I mean, something like this. You know? So it'd just be like, all right, you know, the rel index plus equals some random direction. What the heck? No. So, I'm assuming we have like a random in array kind of thing. No? Random unilateral. Random between. Random next. We don't just have a random count? Random choice. That's it. Random choice. That's all I really wanted. So we'll just do a random choice of direction there. And the same would be true in the branching case. In fact, I'll pop that out so that anyone can use it. And the only difference here would be, I would say that like the tile that we start from would change. So in the branching case, I will pick first, I do still want this. I will pick a random choice of tile as well. So random choice series tile count, right? So like that. So yeah, whatevs. For scatter, I don't know. Is there no plus equals? Tile pattern. I agree with you. What did we call this? Oh, we didn't. So let's just say there's a type. Like so. And what is the problem? Missing, I agree. Is that better? All right. So our Gen v3 looks like it doesn't have an operator plus equals. I do not. Oh, so it's just a V3S. Oh, why did we call it? I guess we just like didn't remove that type. I was wondering about that. All right. So our V3S. We can't search for operator either. Yeah. Oh well. Yep. That's too bad. Anyway, we don't have an operator plus equals, so let's just put one in. And, you know, that seems fine. So operator plus V3S, you know, there just needs to be a plus equals. So I'm just going to say, like, okay, here's the plus equals. I guess the way you write these in C would be this, right? So we would add these two together, and it should call this, right? Operator plus is ambiguous. How is it ambiguous? What is ambiguous about that? Oh. Just forgot the equals. So anyway, that should allow us to do plus equals, which we want to be able to do. No reason not to. And now we've got different patterns. The pattern is not being selected right now, so it should always be horizontal, which in this case it was. So we should just see like lines randomly in the world of these patterns, where it just randomly picks a number and they're as long as the number is. Really? No one hopped on that yet? All right. So if I go ahead and head out through the world, I should just see only lines, and that is what I see. And everyone's happy. And no one cares. So now let's try some other stuff. Oh, we didn't implement scatter case. So in scatter case, I don't think, you know, no one cares what that does, but basically that would just be, you know, I don't know what the range would be. So if it's -5 and the random choice would give you up to 10. So, oh, I have random between. So let's just say, you know, there's some kind of radius. I don't even know. I don't care at the moment. But we'll just do something where we randomly pick a scattering amount. And so it can scatter. And then from there, we can now try some of these out. So let me like hard code this for now. Let's say I want 8 things and I want them in like the vertical pattern. It might be hard to pick that though. A lot of them won't work. We should probably do some retries because you wouldn't be able to fit 8 vertically. So yeah, that won't work. So we can put in some lower number, but we should do some retries. So here's another thing. Let's do retries too. Let's do a double retry pattern here. This is just going to be, we're just sucking down the CPU like it's nobody's business. So let's just move this out. So what we can do is when we create this tile pattern, right, we can just create it without ever actually creating the tiles. So then we can come out here. That was very Canadian. We can come out here, buddy, and we can create the actual tiles after the fact, right? And if I look at the get tile function, it looks like I can just pipe that directly in. So I think, and let's see if this is true. I think I can just do like, look, grid, with whatever the tiles at I like things are. I should be able to just do this. You know what I'm saying? So I think that would work. Oh, I can even pass the Gen V3. Okay, it's even easier than that. It's literally just that. So I just do like, okay, you know, get that tile out and create the thing. So now it should be able to create stuff after it's already got the whole pattern that it wanted to place. You know what I mean? And off it goes. Oh, I gotta actually hop on it. There we go. Come, get out of here. We gotta add combat because that skeleton is getting annoying. And I want to be able to punch it. Oh, thank you, Mr. Skeleton. I don't know how we're going to fix the fact that if a snake winds itself into a corner, it's unable to hop out. Right? Because the rule for snakes is the body has to hop in the same pattern as the head. So if the head winds itself into a corner, it literally can't get out, which I don't know what we should do about that. Maybe allow the head to hop over itself. You got me. Like I said, I ain't no game designer, bro. That's a game design question. And I don't know. This will get fixed by me just being able to punch this dude, but, you know, I don't know. I don't know what you should... What's the game design answer there? So, if we do it this way, now we can just do the tile pens pretty trivially. And that's all fine. So let's try some of the other ones now. Tile pattern... snake. And this should just create a contiguous line, but the line shouldn't or won't necessarily go in any particular direction, right? So it can create any connected region that doesn't ever split. So you know, so far so good. Those are all what you would expect. And come on, get out of my way. Yep. And let me make that be a longer pattern so that we can just kind of verify what's going on here. Oh, that's cool. It even goes downstairs. We got to fix that camera so that it's going outside the room is a problem. We just need one that doesn't create stairs. So I don't actually know what is the answer to that. Why is that happening? You know what? We pretty much, this is basically done. Let me test it, and then we're gonna go fix the stupid stairs. Like, I don't even know why the stairs are doing that. Like, I have no idea why we're creating stairs down to nowhere. So somebody should probably do something about that, and that somebody is gonna have to be me because I'm the only one here. But it looks like the snake one is working fine. So that's fine. And no one cares. So, let's try branching. Well, you know what? Let's just make this pattern larger. So let's make a really large pattern and verify that the snake still looks snake-y. And then we'll see if the branching looks branchy. Right? Oh. What's the maximum count of tile patterns? I don't even know. So it's like only 12. Which is not great. Like, we probably want more than that. So I'm gonna say, like, buckle up, friends. Brains are big, you know? They are large, and you're gonna have to, like, get with the program. So again, hard to say, like, but it, that's definitely a legal pattern. We don't know for sure that it didn't branch, but we we know that that's valid. What I will say is I don't love the look of it, so I might say that Snake should maybe check to make sure that in general it doesn't place it next to more than one. So like if I look at how the Snake thing worked, um so this code, um I think what I would want to do is say when we place a tile, if you were about to place a tile that would be next to a tile other than the previous tile, don't place the tile. I think that's more what I would consider a snake pattern, you know? Um I don't know. Like I just think that might be a thing. Um and you could see why you would want that in either case. So like I'm just gonna I'm just literally making this up, but let's suppose in here there's a thing that's like um max neighbor count or something. And so in here we'd say like the max neighbor count is like 4, which is the highest it could possibly be. But then other people would say and we could do zero isolation here. I could instead say required empty neighbor count, right? So we could say like, look, normally it doesn't require their empty neighbors. It doesn't matter. But in here we would just say like, oh, okay, if we change it to the snake tile pattern, then we may want to set the required empty neighbor count to 3. Meaning every time we place one, you're not allowed to place it somewhere that has more than just one neighbor, which is whichever the last one was that you placed. And so then in here, we would count the neighbors. So we'd do something like this. In fact, Mr. Direction here would actually help us out tremendously. So we could do something like this, where we said, test for empty neighbors here. So we have like empty neighbor count equals 0. We'll count the empty neighbors, and then we'll say if the empty neighbor count is less than the required empty neighbor count, greater than or equal to, then we go ahead and append the tile, and off we go. Right? So that seems good. And what we'll do here is we'll just say like dir index equals 0, dir index less than array count, dir plus dir index. And then what we can say is that thing we were doing before where we say tile already exists. So we'll just do tile already exists for whatever that direction is. So we'll just say if a tile already exists, well, more specifically, I guess I'll say if a tile doesn't already exist, then the neighbor count goes up. Right? All right. So maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. Who's to say? That looks great. And so now that produces patterns that are more like game-y to me, right? It's not placing patterns in locations that would. Oh, I don't know. Every time we hop below the floor level, the camera doesn't know where to go. You notice that? This is what's above us, right? The camera, like it's if we were at the point where we're actually in ship mode, we would start to write these down, but pretty far from there. All right, so that is a much better pattern placeor, in my opinion, and now you can really see the snake-like nature of these particular patterns, and that's great, and everyone loves it, and the game sold millions of copies on the Epic Steam store. So now, if we just, hop around and such, it's good. That all looks good. So let's try some other things now. Let's try branching. And branching can still keep that constraint, but we may also want to reduce that constraint depending on how we want things to go. But now you can see we're creating some nice paths that have branches in them, which is another thing we want from a gameplay perspective. And we may want to improve the quality of those choices, but who gives a shit? Ooh, who cares? Is what I meant to say. That's like the fourth swear on Handmade Hero. We were going so well. I should have just marked the stream as adult at the beginning. We need a thing on the episode guide so we can actually get a definitive number of times that there was a cuss word. It's been very few. But I do not know how many. But it's been very few. I just don't actually know. Is it 4? I feel like Miblo probably knows. They're probably marked, but I don't know. All right. So anyway, if we want to now check the scatter pattern, which is the only other one that we haven't actually tested, although I didn't test the horizontal and vertical with the required empty neighbor count, but I don't see why those would be affected. So we don't really need to do much there. So let's try the scatter pattern. Here's the scatter pattern. That looks pretty good. And the other cool thing about that is now that we have this, we could also require the empty neighbor count to be 4, and that would put only disconnected pieces, right? So that's pretty cool too. So even with just that small bit of code, we've got a lot of options now. So I'm happy with that. I think that's great. That gives me everything I need, I think. Does anyone know? No one knows? Anyway, so now I think let's fix the why are there stairs down to nowhere problem. Because that should be pretty straightforward. We should fix that. We can also fix the pressure plates, but we're in good shape here. And I also don't know. So do we have lights that light up? I don't know that we do. So the other thing that's a little annoying is when I generate one of these tiles, it doesn't actually put. So if you look at what happens here, right? There's a thing that just changes the color of the tile, but I feel like we also want a thing that's like pieces one, um, or just you add a piece. Like I feel like we want to add a light, you know? So like this thing here where we take the entity, I feel like it wants to add a light that's placed over these patterns. And so like I don't know how this should work, because we haven't really thought this through, but so I'm not sure about that, but argument 3, yep, too used to using V3S's here. But because I kind of wanted lights on top of the tiles as well, and so I'm not sure if I draw lights. I just want to see if I can get lights added on top of each of the tiles in some way that we can readily identify. So if I go into the entity code where it draws that, there's like a thing that'll draw like lights to the extent that there are any lights. And so I was wondering if I could just put that in there. So like this code, you know, if I turn that on, we should see like lights, and there they are, right? So unfortunately they're like embedded in the thing, which is kind of dumb. So I probably needed to fix that. So, you know, let's suppose that it was more like that. And now if we run this, I'm just wondering if we can get lights above our things. Yeah. So that works a little bit better. And so if those lights are there, then what I was wondering is like, could the lights kind of follow the pattern like of being lit or not? Meaning that in here, if I have these lights and I just say, well, maybe there's no emission color for the thing at first, right? And this thing, again, I really don't know, because this isn't my area of expertise, right? But like I'm just thinking, like, if the lights lit up when you stepped on them, you know what I'm saying? So in here, when we have the switches, there's like a thing where it sets the color. So that's like how the color gets set. You could imagine like this happening. So it's color emission. So basically it's like, you know, if it, I don't know. So like in this case, right, we're just hopping around, and the lighting is just, you know, whatever. And then I hop on one of those. Well, that didn't look like it actually turned on that light at all. Also, the fact that I'm not seeing any lights right now is a little disquieting. Where have all the lights gone? That's super creepy. Did you notice that? We have to take a look at what's going on there, because I don't really know. But it's pretty weird. So, like, this room has lights in it. And the other room doesn't. Like, the lighting, it just didn't place any lights in that room, I guess. So that's pretty creepy. This room has lights, but it doesn't look like there are any lights in our actual, where we just said that I wanted to place them. So that's weird as well. I don't have an explanation for that. So in here, we're doing an add piece light call, and you can see it adding the piece that's occurring, right? I mean, in entity gen, I mean, that seems all right. Let me just double check that I'm doing what I think I'm doing. So there's the entity, there's the radius, the offset, the emission, and the color. The color and the emission just get bundled together, right? Which is not particularly interesting. The add piece call that's getting called here, it's just an asset tag, which we don't care about at all. So we're just spamming the radius 3 times, placing an offset, and the color. That should just work, right? So I don't... Oh, wait, but... No, I mean, that should just work, right? So I'm not sure what's the problem. Why are we not able to see this? I don't quite follow. Because I feel like I should be able to see that. And something's off, right? The fact that I can't. I don't think there's anything weird going on. And in here, what was weird, even weirder, is when I had this set to something. It actually worked. So when I did an add piece light from before, it actually worked, meaning we saw them. So it's really strange that I can't change it after the fact or something. I don't know what's going on there, right? You see all of the things, and then somehow like this wasn't changing. So why? Is that not the only place that would need to change? Is there something more to it than that? It's still like kind of impossible to use this to find anything. I'm hoping we can get this fixed, because this takes forever. It'd be faster for me to just go to the file myself, right? Okay, so in here, for those pieces, is there some other thing that, like... What else would need to happen? Is this just a case of, like, passing this down? Oh, so, here's a question for you. Is this just a case of, like, the brightness here is too bright? And, like, you can't actually set numbers up that high? I thought you could, but I don't know. Now that I think about it, I don't know how we have set up the lighting stuff yet in that way, right? So let's take a quick pause and see if maybe that's actually what's happening there. Because that could be all it is. Okay, so it's just a case of like that being too hot. Now, so I don't know, is one the brightest thing? Like, what's the brightest thing when we're actually adding lights? Like here, what we're passing like 10 and crap, right? So I don't understand why that, you know, wouldn't work. That should make a light bright green light at that location. Yeah? I mean, am I wrong about that? That'd be my guess. But it definitely doesn't do that, right? Like, it's like that code never got called. So I'm clearly wrong about that. I'm like just not understanding something about the way these lights are working. Right? Because they don't seem to be doing anything. Like, you don't see even any bounce on the wall there. And so if I were to add that as a standard piece of lighting, and this could just be bugs in our lighting code, right? Because the lighting code's kind of crappy. But something's up. And so if we take a look at what happens with the tiles there, if I was to do add piece light, oh, are there maybe multiple pieces already in the thing somehow? Could that be why? Like, is it possible that this is actually not piece 0? We should check that out. That could be. It could be that this is the wrong one, right? So, like, you know, if it turned out there was actually secretly another piece on there and we had to set piece 2 or something, then that might make more sense. I'm not optimistic about that, right? Yeah, that doesn't seem to have changed anything, but so I don't know. That's a really confusing. But let's step in the debugger and just see what the heck is going on, because I have no idea, right? None whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and build this in debug mode, and I'm going to look to see, like, if there's some magical nonsense happening there. The first thing I'm going to do is just look at this code to see what it actually adds, just so I make sure that that's not something strange. So I'm going to, inside entity gen, I'm going to just stop right here and just see what's going on. So if we take a look at the tile, and I look at the pieces, I just want to know how many pieces there are and what the count is. Okay, so it does look like that's the case. So there are 3 pieces. Why are there 3 pieces? Who is adding 3 pieces to this thing? So I have no idea why that would be happening. Why would there be 3 pieces added to this thing? Like, when we place down the structural entities, you don't place, like, we don't place pieces on them, do we? Or do we? So in the room gen code, you can see us placing a piece right here, right? But then, does anyone... Oh. Oh. My. Well, well, well. So actually, as it turns out, I'm totally wrong about that. So these are occluder pieces that are placed in the environment that we use to create sort of like a ceiling. Very interesting. And if I look at place tree, the tree, why would we place an occluder on the entity? This is just stupid. Like, this is the thing that places the tree. The add tree thing should place the occluder, right? So I don't know what the heck this is supposed to do. That is just dumb, right? Because this is actually the code that you would want. It goes on the tree. It doesn't go in the square. So that's nonsense, right? Total nonsense. So then the question is just, what kind of nonsense is this? So it looks like there's an occluder. The occluder is placed overlapping, and then there's a ceiling one, right? So it does actually look like I was right. There are more in there. So all right. So it's this, right? Where we would want to change which light it is. So like, you know. And this is not particularly good. We should probably do something other than this, but for right now, I'm okay with it. And I don't really remember exactly how we test to see if something is a light. Also, I have no idea why there's nothing right here. But okay. I also don't know, is entity piece asset actually being used still? No, it's not. So goodbye to you as well. All right. So what we want to do here is say, like, if this is a light, we're going to change the light. That was all that I was going to say. So in here, it would literally just be that, I think. And then we'll see what happens. So all right, that seems fine. And you know, we should probably do. Oh God. No. What is happening? Don't run the game. So we should probably do some cleanup on like debug switches at some point so that we can quickly check light locations and stuff like that without having to actually do any kinds of, like, just on hotkeys, you know? Because it's something we're going to want. Puss! Hello. Do you want to say hello? Here. Say hello. Come up and say hello. Okay? Do you want to say hello? Here. Come on. There you go. No, it's over. Baby, it's over there. It's over there, sweetie. Here. There you go. Can you see? Do you want to say anything to the audience? Do you want to say anything? Are you happy, puss? Are you happy, pussy? What is going on? You're probably unhappy about your flea medicine still, huh? It's only once every few months, but it's important. What do you think? What do you think? Hmm? I gotta finish the stream, but then we can play after. Okay? You wanna do that? Okay. Let's go down. Let's go down. You just had your lunch, huh? No, actually, you had a lunch quite some time ago. I don't know. All right. Just finishing up. Let's see. So that should create like green lights where we hop on switches, which it does, right? So that's fine. I don't know that we want quite that, but I just wanted to see if I could do it, right? And it does seem. It does seem. All right, so let me check out the stairs thing real quick, just as one last thing before we stop. Welcome to way too much light. So the other thing I was wondering is what happens if we just turned off the standard lighting pattern? So in the like world gen. What if I just like turn that off? Like it's not gonna happen. No, puss, no. I gotta finish the stream. Oh, puss. You don't want to program right now, do you? Can you sit on my lap? Can you be a good girl and sit on my lap while I finish the stream? How about that? What do you think of that? No? Alright, well, we're gonna try. We're gonna try, okay? So I'm not sure exactly entity gen. I'm not sure exactly what happens in the entity generator here right now. Did I still leave those other lights on? Because I think I might have. Which I didn't want to. No, see, I didn't. So these should not be generating any light, right? So shouldn't these rooms just be dark? But they're not, which is a little odd. I guess you can get some light from above, but it shouldn't really be that much, right? So, like, why is there so much light coming in here? I do feel like that's a little bit weird, but I don't know. When we go to do a final pass on lighting, it'll be interesting. All right. So I think that that's all fine. I'm gonna take a really quick look at the stairs thing, just so I can see if there's something obvious going on there. So there's some kind of stairwell nonsense here, right? And if we look at what that's doing, you can kind of see that we're like offsetting the stairs. So really what that's saying is it's like, hey, are we on a stairwell up or down? which is not what we want, I don't think. So when we loop through these connections, if there's a stairwell up, we don't care. So I think it's maybe just that. Maybe. So I think that's more what we want. Now there's other stuff we want to do because we probably don't want to put like we shouldn't be able to hop in there, right? So we don't want on the stairwell down, we probably want to remove those tiles. So we may want to do something like this. Like we want to say that we're on a wall. We want a wall here, I think. So we probably want like this. Now might be a good time to start cleaning this code up too, because we're going to actually care about our rooms more now. But anyway, what we might say is like, all right, we're on a wall if you're here. You know what I'm saying? Although we don't really want a wall. We just don't want you to be able to walk there. So more specifically, like, you know, I don't know. Something like that. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly how I want that to be, but we'll see. But it would be something like that. Where like if there was an up connection, you're not supposed to be able to stand there. You know what I'm saying? And only if there wasn't also one down. So if there's one up and down in the same room, that's fine. But like, you know. So what I would want to do, so here it is, it's traversable, right? So that's what we actually want. So traversable would be here. And the problem that we're going to have is traversable gets set somehow in here to true, right? When you're not on a wall. And maybe what I want to do is do it the other way around. So it's false here. And that way I can say, look, assume that it's traversable. And that way in here I can say it's not. So if you're on a wall or you're underneath the place, the connection or whatever, on wall can be moved back down to here, right? It doesn't need to be looked at above. And Puss is so sweet right now. She's sitting right on my lap. You can't see it, but she's behaving so well on the stream. What a good puss you are. What a good puss you are. So now we just can't go there, right? We can't go under the stairs. So that seems good. And, you know, we'll want to probably make that look a little different, but at least now it's like sane. And it won't put the floor tile, like the stompable tiles won't go on there. So that seems good as well, right? All right, I'm gonna call that a day. We will do a brief Q&A, and then that will be the end of that. Right. No questions? If there are no questions, then we are done. I'm glad that the audio seems to have worked today. So, hey, you know, that's pretty good. How you doing, Miss Thang? You doing okay? All right. Any ideas on how to stop the snakes from getting stuck? No, I don't really. So, there's a lot of things we could do. We could make the snakes smarter so they tried to avoid getting stuck. That's one thing. But that wouldn't necessarily so I guess what I would say about that is that wouldn't necessarily stop the snakes from getting stuck. What that would do is decrease the likelihood that the snakes are getting stuck. So if the snakes were somewhat smart and intentionally tried not to do that, then they would do it less often, but the player could probably still force them to do it, or circumstances could force them to do it. Now, again, that's why I say this is more of a game design question, because I feel like you really would want to know, you'd want to have a game design opinion about which one of those it should be, and I don't know which it should be. So that's what I would say about that. The other things we can do, if the idea is snakes should never get stuck, is we can just make it that if a snake looks and can't find anywhere to hop, it's allowed to just randomly pick another place, right? And that's, again, it's a gameplay decision. And maybe that's cool, like the whole snake will hop over to somewhere else. Maybe we don't even want snakes in the game, right? So I don't know. That's what I would say. It's really, programming it is not super hard, so us writing code to do whatever it is we want it to do is not super difficult. It's a game design question. It's what should it do? Like, what do we want it to do? And that's inherently a game design question. For this kind of game, I think you probably don't want smart AI. This is a game about, it's supposed to feel like Zelda-like or Binding of Isaac. Those games don't want really smart AIs. What they want is like predictable enemy behavior that the player goes, oh, I know this enemy does this pattern, right? So I would say that game design wise, in order to remain on theme, we probably don't want the AI doing anything super smart. So the AI shouldn't think very much. They should do things that a player can immediately know that this is the pattern it will do. But beyond that, I just don't know. Following up on the question I asked you before, I thought about what you said, and I'm not sure I understand. Okay, well, I would need more information on what you didn't understand, though, in order to answer more. This is from a question from the pre-stream, so it's quite a bit back. Oh, Ouroboros is a great idea. Have the snake eat its own tail. Oh, that might be cool gameplay wise, because then if the player traps a snake into a place where the snake can't get out, it would, the player will then have caused the snake to kill one of its own pieces. That could be cool, right? I've seen things about having a fixed update clock for the game, but rendering at a higher frame rate requires you to interpolate between states. To do this, would you just duplicate your game state each time and interpolate between the current and previous for every entity? That seems quite expensive. So, I mean, that is what people generally do, but it's actually not as expensive as you might think. If you want to keep the cost down, it's not that bad because the renderer doesn't care about the entire game state. It only needs to know like positions and orientations usually, and maybe a few other things that are dependent on those things. So typically, I think what you do is you're only talking about storing a previous like interpolation position, but you don't have to like duplicate everything. You could if you wanted to, um, but it's not as bad as you might think, I guess is what I'd say. I'm looking for a lightweight way to traverse 3D voxels along an array and accumulate a color in OpenGL. Any suggestions about algorithms that are mostly branchless? I'm probably the wrong one to ask. I just don't do a lot of GPU programming these days, so I'm really the wrong one to ask. Stepping along a voxel is not that hard, obviously. Um, but the question of what's the most efficient way to like organize that kind of thing on a graphics card is, I mean, what I'd probably do if I were you is I'd go look at the sparse voxel octree paper, which was a while ago, and I would go look on like Google Scholar or Sightseer or something and look at all the people who reference that paper that are more modern. So I'd like reverse crawl from that paper forward because there's going to be a ton of papers on voxel walking on GPUs and people have studied this problem. So you don't have to come up with the answer yourself. There's a lot of research on that. You know what I mean? I want to get deeper into C assembly, but I already have 3 projects ongoing in C# and running my business. How did you manage learning new topics while inundated with other work? So I guess what I would say is, obviously you have to assess how important it is for you to learn whatever it is that you want to learn. If you're stressed and you don't have time, um, it's not usually going to be a great environment for learning. So, you have to ask yourself, is this the right time in my life to make time for this thing? And if you really want to learn it, then it's always the right time to try and make time. But you may be like, nah, I'll wait and I'll do it, when I'm a little older and maybe some of this settles down or I don't care, whatever. But so make sure it's the right time and that you want to actually make time for this thing first. Don't pile too much stuff on yourself and stress yourself out too much. But if you've decided that now is the time and you want to set aside some time for learning something, what I would say is if you're running a business and you have a bunch of C# projects, I guess one thing I would ask is, can you actually just integrate it in? Like C# can call out to C or assembly libraries. Do you have some stuff you're doing in your C# code right now that's slow? Like, do you have any performance critical stuff that you wish would run faster? What you could do is say, let me make a little C library, DLL, that I can call from C#, and let me start trying to optimize that in assembly or with intrinsics or something, or multi-threading, right? So you could try to just take little pieces of what you're doing now and say, can I make one of these be like a learning environment that I just do in my spare time? So don't make it business critical. Like, you don't want something that you're learning to be in your critical path, but just like, I'm going to spend a few hours a week tinkering with this. Let me see if I can make something that I can actually use as part of what I do. So it's not totally separate, right? So one thing that always gets me, how do you stop yourself from overcomplicating things? I always seem to try to be clever and it almost always seems to be a bad idea. So there's no real way to stop yourself from overcomplicating things, because your brain won't pick the simplest way every time when you start. So I don't think it's worthwhile to try to hold yourself to a standard of always write the simplest code first. You should be trying to write simple code, but you won't always succeed. And even people like me or John Blow who say all the time, you can even hear me say on the stream, like, I'm just going to write the simplest possible thing. We'll say that. He'll say that. I'll say that. We still end up with overcomplicated code all the time, right? The thing that keeps us from spiraling out of control on it is that eventually we go, this is getting too complicated. Let's figure out a way to simplify it, right? And so it's really more about putting in a mental process that you do periodically where you're like, is there an opportunity to simplify this? Is there an opportunity to, like, just always thinking about that? How can I reduce the amount of code that's involved here, right? And so I feel like mostly that is what you have to learn, because always try to write the simplest code first, but you won't know. Like, when I sit down to write code, I don't know what, for something that's a complicated problem, I don't know what is the simplest way to handle it. I may never have thought of the right techniques that make that code simple. And they may only emerge after I've written 1,000 lines of the wrong code and be like, oh, wait, I could have simplified all this down to 20 lines of code if I'd just done this other thing. So it's really more about keeping that mental process of focusing on simplicity when you go back to things. Looking at the code, I'm going to add a new feature. Could I have simplified this? Is it too complicated? Am I actually getting any benefit out of this? And we've done that many times. We did that with the asset system. We've done that with the entity stuff, the generation code, right? And we'll be doing it more as we get closer to shipping Handmade Hero. There's always opportunities for simplicity. There's way too much code in Handmade Hero right now. If we did an audit and went through and thought about each section, we could simplify each and every one of them. And so it's really just about making that time and doing that mental exercise of going, how can I simplify this? You won't always have time. I mean, I remember the witness code base. There's tons of stuff in there that's massively overcomplicated. You won't always have time to simplify everything. But the way that you keep it from spiraling out of control is just by doing that periodic cleanup. And there's no way around that. As you get better at programming and focus more on simplicity, it's true that you'll create less messes, but it will only be less messes. There will still always be a mess. So you always have to think about, how do I clean up my messes? Because you're never going to get out of it completely. Unless you're literally writing the exact same thing you've written many times before, you're not going to pick the perfectly mess-free way to do it the first time. So it's just about that mental process. Would it be possible to have two switch tiles in very different rooms that you have to hop on to open a door or unlock something? With the current way that Handmade Hero is architected, you would have to do a little bit of extra work to do that. You'd have to add a field to the entities to do that. Because right now, long distance stuff, Handmade Hero thinks in terms mostly of regions. So if you're talking about two totally separate switches, what you would need to do is have something that tracks, like, here are some global state things that are true through the whole game. I don't want anything like that in the game. Like, I don't really want the player to have to go... If the player was supposed to get something that has an effect somewhere else, I would want it to be something they carry, like a key or something. I don't really want there to be, like, really distant switches that you switch on and off that are, like, nowhere near each other. So I probably won't be adding anything like that, but if you wanted to, you might want to consider having the brains be more permanent. So there's the first N brains are permanent brains that can just track infinitely large things if you want. It'd be pretty easy architectural change. But, you know, it would just mean that the entity cache would never page those out. They're just permanently in. So that way they can be as far affecting as possible, right? But I would still want to keep all the current stuff because I don't want most entities to have that. I don't want most entities to have to be in memory all the time or in play all the time, right? Young Kev, thank you for the compliment. It's not me, unfortunately. It's the camera lighting. Yeah. Oh, there is so much cat hair floating around in this household. I keep the puss very brushed. I brush her all the time, but I mean, she's still always shedding. All right. Um. Okay. So from what I understand, you started Handmade Hero because you thought people didn't know what it took to make a real game, and it would be good if they did. So it seems like you do care about instrument. So no, I guess what I would say is it was more to make a record of how this kind of programming works, right? So it was to have like a preserved sort of version of it, um, but for people who want that. So the idea is not to convince people to do what I do. It's to provide a a series for the people who want to do it, right? That they can come and watch it or know how it happened, right? So it's not really supposed to be evangelical, right? Not religiously evangelical, but you know what I mean, like evangelical, the literal definition of that word, meaning it's not supposed to be pushing people like you need to do this. It's supposed to be, if this is something that interests you, here is the series, right? Um, so yeah, and I actually, one of the things that's true, and this is a definitely a conflict between me and I guess what I would say is like the way that people behave online these days, is I don't like telling other people what to do, right? So like nowadays the general culture online is that everyone thinks that they get the right to tell you what to do. Like that's the attitude online, to the point where if they don't like what you do, they actually literally don't want you to like exist, right? They want you to not have a channel on Twitch because they don't like what you show on the channel on Twitch, or you shouldn't have a Twitter account because they don't like what you post on Twitter. So I am 100% like, that is so terrible to me. Like I find that not only to be abhorrent and horrible as a way of thinking, but also I feel like it's the antithesis of what the computer revolution was. So the computer revolution to me was that everyone gets to use a computer, right? And you can do what you want with your computer. That was what it means to me, right? And this was a really great thing in my opinion, because it allowed you to, each individual could do what they wanted to do with their computer. This is what the personal computer revolution was about. And so I want everyone to be able to do what they want to do with their computer. You know, that's what I would prefer. And I don't, this is why I don't go to like people, like you've never seen me go to someone's stream and complain about the programming language they were using, because I don't understand why someone would ever do that. It's absolutely nuts to me. If you want to complain on your stream about the programming language that someone's using, that makes perfect sense, because the people came to your stream to hear your opinions or to hear what you were doing. So if I say that I think it's stupid to program in modern C++ on my stream, that makes a lot of sense. Everyone came here to listen to what I have to say. But the idea online that you should go to someone else's feed or someone else's stream or someone else's thing and complain about what they do, or tell them that they have to change what they do, is so, to me, that's horrible. I don't understand why people do it. It's a weird thing that I can't understand, right? And obviously it makes perfect sense to them. But to me, I can't imagine it. So on my stuff, you will never see me do that. I'm never going to go to like someone else's thing and tell them not to do something because I don't like it, right? Um, and I've tried to really never do that on Twitter anymore at all either, right? Um, so if I complain about something on Twitter, I try pretty hard to complain on like it posts just to my thing. I try not to go to like other people's, you know, conversations they're having and say something, um, to the extent that I can, and or I just don't use the service anymore, right? And so I didn't want and don't want Handmade Hero to be that. Like I don't want people to interpret Handmade Hero as me trying to go to where they are in their computing space and telling them not to or to do something. I only want it to be something for people who want to do this, right? Like I want them to be coming to the stream. I do not want to be going to them and trying to convince them in any way, whether it's browbeating or being very nice about it. It's not the tone so much as I just don't want that behavior, right? Um, so that's just my mindset of it. And so I really don't want Handmade Hero to be about proselytizing or putting on a hard sell or trying to appear in some way as a way of signaling to people that they should listen to me. I don't want that. Like, I don't want any of that to be happening. I just want to say what I think, and if people want to hear that, they can. And if they don't, they should be able to not have to listen to it, right? And I don't want to put any subterfuge in there where I'm trying to slyly sneak messages I want people to hear into things in a way that is more palatable than it should be, because I know that that will like help or something, right? So hopefully that makes more sense, right? Yeah, and rants are great. Like I have no problem with rants. Just don't do them like on in someone else's turf, right? Like if I want to rant on Handmade Hero about things I don't like, that seems fine. But you know, there's people who will go onto other people's Twitch streams and start like ranting to them about what they're doing. And like I just don't want that. Like I don't want that to be happening, right? If you don't like what someone's doing on their Twitch stream, just don't watch, right? Don't watch that Twitch stream. And you know, if you don't like what someone posts on Twitter, just don't follow that Twitter. You know, it's not that hard. So to me, like I try to do that as much as I can. So do you find value in checking out other parts of the computing space, even those you disagree with, without interfering, of course? Yeah, I guess I would say there's some parts of computing like object-oriented programming where I've just set the bozo bit on it, where it's like I know that nothing interesting happens there. But there's plenty of other spheres of programming that, you know, I don't necessarily think are good ideas as a whole, but they have good ideas in them. One that came out the other day was like pure functional programming. Like I don't think pure functional programming is a very good idea. But there are interesting things about functional programming, and people who do pure functional programming are forced to do the maximum amount of stuff that way. So you can look at what they do and see what all the possibilities are, because unlike procedural programming where you had other options, they had no options. They had to do it that way. They had to do it with purely functional stuff. And so it can be interesting to look at what they come up with, because you're like, okay, if someone is spending all their time in this constrained environment having to follow these rules, they will come up with things that you may never have come up with because you wouldn't have to. And looking at that gives you information that you will therefore never have, because you will never have been forced to push in those directions, right? And so I do think there are other things you can learn about programming by looking at styles of programming that you yourself don't do, because if they involve specific kinds of constraints that you don't subject yourself to, you will not have necessarily been pushed as far in certain directions. So that can be very educational, I think. One last question. If tomorrow everyone started using JavaScript for everything, you wouldn't care at all? Like, you will probably always use software written by other people. Wouldn't it be better that software was of good quality? And if you agree with that, should you try to influence people to care about software being high quality? I mean, I guess what I would say is all the software is written in JavaScript for everything already. So I'm not sure that's a tomorrow question. That's a today question. So I don't really know how to answer that question exactly. It's not that I don't care. It's that I just don't really like evangelism. Right? People, there are certain things I'm willing to do and other things I'm not willing to do, and evangelism just isn't one of them. So I'm willing to say how much I think JavaScript is not great on this stream. I'm not going to go around poking into other people's business telling them not to use JavaScript, right? I mean, that's just not something I'm going to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that I don't think there are negative consequences to it. It's just that, I think that to the extent that I'm going to be loud and proselytize about something, it's going to be more about programmer freedom to ensure that I never get into a situation where I am forced to only write JavaScript all day, right? I want people to have the freedom to do the kind of programming they want to do. I don't want to be going around putting my nose into other people's business telling them how to do what they want to do, right? So like, yeah, JavaScript sucks. I know. I have written a couple thousand lines of code in it just recently for the Starcode Galaxy player, which is supposed to be web compatible, right? And it sucks. JavaScript is terrible. But like, I don't know. It's not like I don't know that the fact that a bad programming language is common is enough reason for me to go around being pushy, you know? So I'm just going to have streams where I tell people that I think this sucks and here's why and here's alternatives, and hopefully people come to them as they seem to. Like, I get a lot of people who come watch my stuff, and that seems like enough. I don't think I need to go around being pushy about it or being sly and trying to convince people. Because at the end of the day, I think if you don't know that JavaScript sucks, I don't know that there's that much I'm going to say. I mean, it's kind of obvious that it sucks. And by the time someone's learned a little bit of programming, you're kind of going to know that JavaScript sucks. Even the people who program JavaScript know it sucks. I mean, they created TypeScript so that they wouldn't have to deal with JavaScript, So I don't know that these things are really all that much of a problem with proselytization anyway. Does anyone think JavaScript is good? Most people who even use it as their primary output language don't want to program in it. They use TypeScript now, right? So why is it? Oh, I mean, JavaScript sucks so in so many ways. I mean, you can't even really make threads in JavaScript, for example, right? Like, try to write a multi-threaded piece of code in JavaScript. Good luck. Um, but yeah, I mean, we could go on for a long time about what JavaScript does. The lack of typing, so you can't really get static type analysis. This is why TypeScript is useful, right? Um, but there's so many reasons. I mean, it's got a lot of really bad aspects to it. It's just not a good language in general. Um, but like I said, I really don't think that many people think it's a good language, which is why you have things that people try to put on top of JavaScript to make it work. Okay. But anyway, should probably wrap it up. All right. Let's switch back. Thank you, everyone, for joining me for this episode of Handmade Hero. It's been a pleasure coding with you, as always. If you would like to follow along the series at home, you can always pre-order the game on handmadehero.org, and it comes with the source code so that you can play around with it. I will be back here next week, at which point, honestly, maybe it's time to put combat in there. So we'll probably we'll do some stuff where we can fight some enemies and just try to get that working. And then, I don't know, like, probably then after that it's items, right? And then we'll sort of have like I mean, I don't know, like I said, not a game designer, but we're just going to go through things that I think should be in there, and we'll kind of hope that we get a reasonable enough playing thing out of it at the end of the day. So that's it. See you back here for that. Until then, have fun programming, everyone, and I will see you on the internet. Take it easy, everybody.